Hi, everyone. This is Caroline with Thriving Abroad, the expat interviews, where we go all over the globe to find amazing and wonderful people who are living and thriving abroad. And today I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to bring you, share with you an expat who shared something that I had the unfortunate experience to share, to have. And basically, we're going to talk a little bit today about being in a country when protests break out. You know, you've seen it on the news. You're living somewhere in beautiful paradise. It's happened everywhere in many countries, and all of a sudden, violence breaks out, protests, and what do? You know, we're expats. It's not our country. So we just wanted to share a couple of tips and thoughts on what we went through and things that you should look for if you are deciding on living abroad. And today I have the beautiful Neusha, who's originally from the Bahamas, and she's going to share with us her story of living through some drama in Myanmar recently. And I was really anxious for her to, to share just a little bit of what it was like, being an expat alone in this country. Thank you so much, Neusha, for sharing your story. And so you're originally from the Bahamas. You are teaching in Myanmar, and then the unthinkable happens, right? Protests begin, and there's civil unrest. How did you find out about it when it first started?
I think we just there was like messaging in the chat groups. I'm a school counselor, and so we have our school counselor group, and then just different friend groups here or in Yangon locally. And then people just started talking. We just started talking amongst ourselves. And this happened during a work day. So it's like, okay, this happened at like early in the morning at like 4 or 5 a.m. Now, what are we supposed to do? And so then we get a message from our director that we're going to proceed our workday as normal. And honestly, we were, due to COVID, we were already working mostly online and from our homes and things like that. So really, it just felt like a normal work day. Like if you didn't know that was going on up in the other city, you had been like, oh, just a regular hot day in Yangon. And then just kind of as more information came out, then it was like, oh, this is serious. This is actually happening. And and then just over the weeks, things just continue to progress. More people join the protest movement, and their support, of course, increases. And then, of course, the opposing side is like, we don't want this. And then, of course, the violence kicks off. But even before that, I think my husband has kind of done a good job in like being the grounding for me and like making sure that I have things prepared because, prior to the coup, it was COVID. So making sure that I had things in place that if I needed to leave the country for whatever reason, that I wouldn't be, scattered just trying to figure things out in the middle of an emergency.
I'm glad you said that because it's so important to have support when you're going through things like this. I also was by myself living in Nicaragua when the protests broke out in 2018, and it was, it's kind of scary, because things escalate so quickly, and as you said, well, at least in Nicaragua, it was from one day to the next. One day there was just a few protests. The next day, it was literally like nationwide. It just blew up, like you lit a match to hay. So it was, it's really, it's really scary when things escalate so quickly and you're, and then when you're through it, and then I don't know, what were your thoughts is, do I stay? Do I leave? These are some of the things that, you think about every day, like, okay, am I going to sit it out? Am I going to leave? Or what do I do? Is it safe? Is it not? What were some of the thoughts that went through your mind when you realized that this is a full-blown situation?
So it was just kind of like, wow, living through another unprecedented moment in time on top of a global pandemic. So it was just like the heaviness of it. Still realizing that as an expat, there's still a level of privilege that, I can leave if I want, whereas, the local staff, local friends, my students, this is their home. And so, they have to do what they need to do to, maintain it. And they can't just up and leave. But friends and I, and most of my friends are other educators. And so we were still having curfews and think COVID curfews. And then we got additional curfews put on us on top of internet curfews. And so just kind of like a lot of compounding things. But like during one of the first internet blackouts, we were like, we could still text and call. So we were like, well, let's just, go by one of each other's houses and just kind of, get together, have that little sense of community. And I think we probably spent just the hours kind of like venting, but talking through the what if scenarios, kind of talking through like, what's your emergency plan? Some of my friends, they're like a teaching couple, and I have another friend who's single with a pet. And so we were all trying to, see how things would work from our individual situations. And I was telling them like, do you have your go bag? And they were like, go bag. I'm like, yes, your go bag should be packed and, near an exit so that, whether it's an earthquake or, something else, it has some things, your necessities, your documents and things like that. And that was just something that I learned from college, being an international student in the States, that you always had your little go bag, your passport in a waterproof envelope just ready to go. And those were some of the things that we talked about. And yeah, we kind of we would go back and forward just in the conversation, but just day to day, like, I'm gonna stick it out. I can make it until June. I got this. I could do this. And then, one morning the internet may not come on until 9 a.m. And then it's like, do I really want to deal with this, not knowing, from day to day, what is going to change, what new things they're going to implement? Am I going to be able to, go to the stores continuously and things like that? And for the most part, you still have access to those things, but being in the situation, you see how very easily things can change. Like literally overnight, I would like go to bed. Like I wouldn't want to go to bed too early because I'm like, what if I miss a new, like an update or something happened and our director sends a memo out and we need to like adjust first thing in the morning before the internet comes on. So yeah, it was just kind of day to day. I might leave, I might stay. And then I just finally got to the point where I talked with my husband and my family, and they were like, when are you leaving? You should leave. Why are you still there? When are you leaving again?
Yeah. And the same, while I was going through that crisis, my friends and family were like, well, just leave. But unfortunately, it's not that easy. I had an apartment. I'd been living there for almost 7 years. So I was pretty rooted. I was settled in. And you just don't, get your go bag. And I had a pet, you just can't just walk out. I mean, there's so many elements to, to getting ready to go. And something that you mentioned that I feel was really important also, with the go bag, like things that maybe people should consider in the future is how close are you to an airport? You know, could you get transportation to get to an airport if you had to leave? You know, the town that I was in was a major town. We did have a small airport, but it was for crop dusters. And the main airport was about 70 kilometers, maybe about 80 miles away. So imagine if I had to walk to that airport, that's an 80-mile walk. You know, which, you know, who's going to do 80 miles? And not to mention what would happen on the way, you know, getting there. So, you know, or my other alternative would be by boat, you know, by water, where I was close. I was only 20 minutes away from the beach. So, you know, knowing how to get out, or just kind of writing down, okay, if this happened, could I get out this way? You know, if that happened, could I get out that way? Those are super, super important things. And again, you know, like you were saying, we don't want to go to a place and think, oh my God, I've got to have my go bag ready because something's going to happen any minute. But it, you know, because you didn't know what was going, nor did you ever expect it, nor did I ever expect that, you know, what happened was going to happen. And so, and your internet would go in and out. The bad side was we had internet, like the internet never went out. And that was to our detriment because there was so much stuff going on social media. Everybody was posting, and then you weren't able to discern the truth, the fact from the fiction. There was, you know, rumors, and this is blowing up, and that's burning down, and this is happening. How was it with the others? They were expats, the other teachers that were there. I mean, were they getting like a flood of all kinds of different information as well?
Yeah, it can kind of become, you know, information overload. Um, you know, people were starting to send me other like group things like, hey, you should join this group, you should join this group. And in Myanmar, Facebook is the internet. And but that's basically how almost every single business and people communicate. And so, you know, it also became, you know, what is true, what is not. There was rumors that, you know, the blackouts, internet blackouts would last all day, and it turned out not to be the case. There was rumors that the blackouts would, you know, go on for periods, and those things never happen. And so I just kind of got to the point where I'm like, you know, I'm not joining any more groups. I'm not downloading, you know, like I turned off automatic download so that I could choose the images that I wanted to download. I was not following all of the links, and I would just kind of limit my consumption because it can become overwhelming. And as a school counselor, I'm already dealing with a lot of the social emotional things that the students are enjoying, the students who are locals, who have a lot of personal emotions tied to this situation. And so I just had to like filter. But like to your point about like, I guess escaping, you also have to add the layer of COVID and the challenges that COVID has created for travel. Like they don't have commercial flights because due to the COVID restrictions. And so, you know, and any of the relief flights, you have to get on a list. You have to make sure you have your testing before, you know, your COVID testing and all of that stuff. You need to know where you can do that. Um, COVID insurance and all these different things. So like, I guess the go bag, the escape plan, you have to like think about all of those added layers that COVID-19 has put on being able to leave. Because before COVID, yeah, you could go to the airport and book, you know, book a ticket anywhere, you know, and it just be very easy.
Well, that is an interesting take. I did not. You have the you know, the COVID element to it, which is an interesting element. But I had the pre-COVID element of there were no flights coming in and out because of the violence. The airlines did not want to fly in. So you know, yeah, I can get to the airport, but I can't go anywhere. So it is an interesting dynamic, at least if you, and then now adding a COVID situation where, there's all these other restrictions on top of other restrictions on top of you just trying to, map out your escape route. Were you, was it possible? I mean, did you have other alternatives? Boat, sea, were there any other alternatives for you?
I don't even know. Like I had not even like I honestly don't know about the the boating situations here. Like I would not have the first clue as to where to look for that. And also, a lot of the information about those types of services are still written in Burmese language. And so there would still be, the matter of communication. But with so many businesses and companies and like offices and things, their workers being a part of the civil disobedience movement, a lot of places aren't open. Your local township office where you need to get your local documents stamped, they're not open. And so there's a backlog of things there. The ports, those workers protesting, so they're closed. Banks, everything has reduced because so many people are out there protesting for what they believe in. Yeah.
Yeah, can you share a crazy story of an experience that you had while all of this is going on?
Well,
I know you probably have a lot, but just one that you could share.
well, I think in the early days, my perception of what was going on was like, oh, this kind of reminds me of like the political season at home. Everybody wearing their shirts in support of the movement, and it seemed almost celebratory. And so like when me and my friends would go walking, we're obvious visually not from there, and so people would like honk their horns and show their symbols at us, like in this expectation for us to, you know, do symbols back. And it's like, we hear you, we feel you, we love you, we support you, but we cannot, we can't do anything to like show visible support or anything like that. And then there was also like the one time that I decided to go out, there was protesting action like near in my neighborhood. And I was trying to meet my friend and we were going to take a taxi. And then the protesters started dispersing. And I'm like, when I see people moving quickly, I need to be moving quickly away from whatever they are leaving away from. So I just went into my little bakery and they like pulled down their blinders. And I was like, is everything okay? And they were like, it's okay, just go have a seat. And I'm sitting in there like, what is going on? And so then they're like peeping through the blinders to see what's going on. And my friend is trying to communicate with me. It was just like, of course, the one time I want to go out, it's chaos on the outside. But in the end, it was concerning because the people want to break up wherever the protesters are. And so once they dispersed, then they kind of left everything as normal. But it was just like, and I've heard stories from other people who just kind of going along their business, going to the shops, end up walking through a protest or getting kind of swept in with a mass of people. And so I definitely try to avoid large areas where groups of people are, as much as I could while I was there.
Yeah, it does. It's scary, because the markets would close early because they were afraid of police activity coming in. So if you wanted to go to the local market, you had to get there first thing in the morning. And when you get there, it's packed, crowded. And then all of a sudden there's shortages. You can't get this and you can't get that. Lines of people waiting to get stuff. and you, like you said, you don't know, is, you know, you hear a noise or people start running and you don't know, you know, is there something going on? Is something happening? It's really an amazing, it's an amazing experience. One of the things that I can share, like a crazy stories I remember, and I want to ask you about this too, as an expat was telling me, to get out of my town and go to another town because they were coming. There was a contingency of soldiers and police or violence that was coming, and they were going to, you know, wreak havoc on that town. And this person was, you know, advising me, you got to get out, you got to get out and go to this place and you'll be okay there. So I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, you know, I just can't get up and go to some other place. I'm not sure. Where I lived was a pretty secure little complex. I'm so thankful that I lived in a you know, a gated community, small, very small. There was only 4 houses there, but we had a gate. We had huge wall fences. But, you know, here he's telling me, you got to get out. They're going to have violence. They're going to this, they're going to that. And so I'm sitting here, and maybe you went through the same thing. Should I go? Should I stay? What should I do? And you spend the whole day, you know, oh my God, you know, should I pack my things? Should I go? Do I leave my dog? Do I take my dog? Like, you know, where do I, you know, and this is just hours of like, what do I do? Oh my God, you know, is it going to happen? Should I do this? You know, and I guess it's just, you know, your mind starts to play tricks with you after a while, because you really don't know, like, you know, you're trying to make the best decision and you're trying to make the best decision for you. And then there's other people that are giving you other, you know, courses of action to take. I mean, did you experience any of that with any of the other expats that are there that are panicking also, in a state of panic?
Yeah, so there were, you know, there were some people in my circles that were definitely, you know, every alert, everything that was, they would like blast it out, and it creates this sense of like scariness. And I think to the city of Yangon, the country of Myanmar is pretty big. It's a big landmass, and even in Yangon, you know, things could be happening in other townships, but it's completely rainbows and sunshine where I live. And then, you know, the next day it's reverse. Um, but like, you kind of feel removed from what's happening in some of those other townships because you don't live in that township. But then, you know, you have expat friends who are like, you know, they can't sleep because of the constant, you know, battle of what's going on out there. I think I think a lot of the expats in Myanmar really have a love for Yangon because it really is a nice city. Parts of it remind me of home and being in Nassau, and like, you know, just the freshness, a lot of the fruits, and just like the pleasantries of the people. And so I think for a lot of expats, it was like, we want to stay for as long as we could ride it out. And, you know, like everybody's kind of like checking in. So like, are you leaving? What are you doing? And like, you would have these frequent checks because from day to day, people change their mind depending on what's going on in their neighborhood. And so like one day people are like, oh, I'm gonna be here, I'm staying. And then 2 days later, they're like, sorry, I'm on the next flight out. And understandably so, everyone has to do what's best for them and their family and their personal situation. Like I do have a friend who has a pet that is staying until they're able to get their pets like travel documents in place, because that's you know, one of the challenges. You
It
can't just
is.
grab the pet on a flight.
Absolutely. Yes, I went through that, been there, and I'm not going to talk about it now, but it was an experience getting that paperwork. If I told you, you're like, oh my God, because you just
Things
can't
you
walk
have
out
to
with your
do.
pet. You just can't.
Yeah.
And that adds another element of stress to, you know, to leaving.
Yeah, and so I think for like the expats, most of us just were kind of like, let's kind of see, we want to stay as long as we can. I think that message of get out whilst you can was more so from local people to
Yes.
us. Like,
Yes.
y'all get out whilst you can.
Yes.
Like, we appreciate that you are here, but y'all should leave. And I don't think they meant anything negative by it, but I think they just
sure.
were like, you know.
But did you, I want to ask you, because I thought this, and this is what kept me, I stayed through, it started in April and I left like the last week of June. It was really intense when I left, but I kept, because my family kept saying, when are you leaving? When are you leaving? When are you leaving? When are you leaving? But were you also like, okay, let me just see. Okay, let me just see. I don't want to just jump up and go. Maybe this will be over in a little bit. Maybe, let's just see. Let's just see. Like, I don't want to be hasty, especially me, because I have a whole house full of furniture, and I'm like, okay, let me just wait and see if things will get better. I mean, was that kind of what kept you like, let's just see how it
Well,
goes?
I had an apartment, still have the apartment still in my name. Um, I had renewed my lease for another 6 months, 2 days before things kicked off. And I was just like, wow. And even on February 1st, I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think, I would actually, leave at any point soon. My whole thing was, try to stay until June. You're not in any physical danger. You personally, you're an expat. So there's still, this level of like distance from what's going on. As long as I'm not actively out there protesting or actively, saying things on social media, that in theory, I should have some semblance of safety. So while in the general space, it was unsafe, I personally didn't feel unsafe. I also lived in like a gated complex with security and all of that stuff. So those were some of the things that were keeping me. And then also the financial aspect of like the expenses of, getting a ticket. Where am I going? Am I going home to the Bahamas where a ticket is going to cost me, like nearly $3,000 plus COVID test and all of that stuff? Am I going to take all of my stuff? Can I take all of my stuff? Am I going to be able to pay for all of that? And so it was like all of those things combined that I was just like, let's just wait. Let's not make a rash decision. And also because I'm still working online, I need to do I want to work through the night and work on Eastern Standard Time, where my day would end at, 4 a.m. or 30 a.m. in the morning. So those were the things that went into my decision making to not rush to leave, but also if I left, to not go as far as all the way home and just kind of stay in the region.
Did you at any point feel that, I know you did just mention that you didn't feel unsafe personally, but was there ever a moment when you felt like, wow, am I going to get out of here in one piece? I mean, did that fleeting thought ever cross your mind, or did you always feel that there was always a way out?
I think I always felt that there was a way out, but I think when some of the violence towards the protesters became closer to my area, it kind of felt like, hearing the shots at night, hearing the things go off in the streets
Oh my
during the
God,
middle of
yes, I remember that.
during the middle of class, and I'm trying to keep a neutral face for my students so that I don't like create more panic for them. And I'm thinking, okay, things are popping off, things are getting real close. You know, what if something ends up in the direction of where my housing is? Those kind of like little what ifs. Even though it wasn't likely, you still read the stories of them going into people's houses. And then I had a personal friend who, she lived in an area that was kind of like a hot spot, but they came into their home and she was just kind of home chilling with her spouse in their jammies. And you have these people in uniform with all of
Guns.
their gear and every guns blazing,
Yep.
us in. And I thought, like, she had her partner with her, and I'm thinking like, what if that happened to me? I'm here by my lonesome. Lord, I don't want to have to, deal with that. And I think for them, that was a breaking point. And so like I know for me, if that had happened, that would have been like, I'm on the next thing out of here. I'm sorry, but it didn't happen. But just the proximity of knowing that it happened to someone I know and that it could happen to more people, um, yeah, just kind of frightening. And it's like, what if they mistake? What if they, yeah.
Sure. Everything that you said, it's almost identical to, to what I went through. I knew of people that were taken out of their homes in the middle of the night, and what they did in Nicaragua to avoid a lot of that is the streets, the locals blocked off the streets. They broke glass and so there were no cars, no cabs, no taxis, and we had to walk basically to everywhere for the most part, because they, for a whole week on my street, they had barricades with trees and branches and fence and rocks, and you couldn't come in or out of off of my street. This is to prevent the possibility of police coming in and just dragging people out. So I got a lot of exercise and I did a lot of walking because you couldn't, that was the only. And then did you notice scarcity in the supermarkets? I know I lived near some supermarkets, and because the trucks couldn't come in because of all the streets being blocked off, there was a scarcity of some food items. Did you have that there at all?
No, there was not. There wasn't a sense of that in the stores. I think some of the stores kind of limited their supplies, but there were enough like local mom and pops. Also, like in the area that I live, there was like a wet market right through my corner. So even if the larger grocery stores kind of ran low, I still had my local mom and pop stores right within my area. And yeah, there was never that sense that there was going to be a shortage. I think there was more panicking, like with COVID, in the initial days of COVID, and possible shortages, even though there no shortage actually happened. There was more of that then than there was in the more recent situations.
So I guess as a wrap up, what is what is your takeaway from all of this, or what advice do you have to give an expat or someone who wants to be an expat? Um, because again, like we said in the beginning, it doesn't matter where you live. I mean, violence can happen in any place, anywhere, at any time. Just like it happened with us, it was from one day to the next. There's no prepping for it. I mean, besides having a go bag, what advice would you give someone who was considering living abroad?
Well, I guess a couple of things, like to what you said, like even just in the United States, you see things going on day to day in different states, and the violence and the protesting, and the impact that it has there. So, it's not something that just happens out in the international sphere. It can happen on your home front. Um, but people wouldn't let that stop them from living there, right? So I would say just kind of do your due diligence in, your researching, and and think about the things that you would be willing to endure, because even if it wasn't violence and protesting, natural disasters happen, and those are things that you can't really 100% plan and prepare for, like
Absolutely.
things
Yep.
like that.
Yep.
So just kind of having a general sense of like, who's your community of people, whether it's locals or expats. Who are the people that if something were to happen to you, um, your family could connect with, or you could rely on as a sense of support? You know, what is your employer? If you are going to be working for another country, for someone in another country, how are they going to support you through those different things? My employer has been very supportive, very communicative throughout this whole situation for all of us, as much as they can, providing us information. Um, and, thinking about some of those extra strategies, and even if you don't have things like laid out 100%, talking it through with local friends that you have there, other expats, just to get some ideas. And you have that sense of community that, if things do hit the fan, there's at least one or two other people you can go through it together. You can make those long walks to the store, or, deal with an internet blackout with someone. Having those tiny little pockets of communities have been helpful.
It's true. Having local friends is really important. And like you said, we didn't have a lot of blackouts, electricity. We did. And, but, it was a very small neighborhood. My little neighborhood was a community of homes that everybody knew everybody. So we were pretty okay. But like you said, if the internet's gone down, or you just need someone for moral support, I feel like it's very important, especially with the locals, because they may get to tap into things that you as an expat aren't aware of. And it could make a big difference in your survival. So do you have your go bag ready now? You're in a new place, a new country. Is your go bag ready to go? Do you have your map? Have you planned out your strategy?
It's unpacked. I've taken a breath. Just I know where things are in my space now. I keep a mental map of, if I do need to leave in a pinch, I do have my documents still in a secure spot and everything. And so at the very least, I'm at least in a country that has more exit access, multiple airports and things like that. And I know where I need to look to grab things if I need to leave.
Yep, that's and again, like you said, not just for protests. I mean, natural disasters. There could be hurricanes, there could be volcanoes, earthquakes. And in Nicaragua, we could check all of those off the list. Forget about just a protest. We were prone to all kinds of natural disasters. So it's really important that you are prepared, because, God forbid, if there was an earthquake, do you know where to go? Do you know how to get out? How would you? What do you take? If you have animals, what do you do? How do you get to the airport? Where, there's so much to take into consideration when living abroad, things that a lot of people probably don't think about, when they first plan. But I'm excited that you are safe and sound. You're kind of starting over again, and hopefully, hopefully that you can live a peaceful existence for the most part. What do you see in the future? Will you be returning to the Bahamas again in the future, or will you just continue to expat and explore other countries now that you've had this amazing experience?
Well, for me, this is kind of just the beginning, because like Myanmar was my first, like outside of being in the United States, which is, a 1 hour plane ride from the Bahamas. Myanmar was like the furthest I had been from home. And so, I'm hoping to be an expat for a few more years, and, hopefully me and my husband will find us a country that we both want to stay in, and we're able to be there together. And we'll see. I mean, the future is ever changing, and I think, I wasn't home in 2019, but in 2019 we had a really bad hurricane that impacted, hundreds and hundreds of families. And the things that we thought we had planned and, foresee as, this is the plan, this is the path that I'm going to take, something happens overnight, and you have to adapt and adjust, and whether you want to or not. And I think um, being out in this international space, and seeing other people around me transition, and then being myself forced into a transition, essentially, it's like, you have to kind of go with the flow. Yes, it's good to have kind of like a map and a plan, but be ready to adapt and adjust and turn your wheel if things start to change. Because if you try to like force yourself to stay on that, it could end up being a worse decision than being flexible.
Yep, definitely, for sure. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit because, we could talk about this, I'm sure, for 3 hours about our experiences. There's so many, so many elements to everything that went on, different countries, but very similar circumstances. But we will be continuing our conversations perhaps in the future about, the things that you really need to look out for when you're living abroad, and things that will help you in cases of emergency. So thank you so much for sharing your story, Nikesh. It's very important, very enlightening, and it's nice to have a survivor sister out there to to talk with also. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And I hope that, as people are watching and listening, that they don't see it as something like scary, like they don't allow like the fear of the what ifs to stop them from going out there and adventuring, because life is still an adventure, and things are going to happen whether you stay in your house all day or not.
It's true. That
So it's
is
up
true.
to kind of like look at what risks you're willing to take, and don't let all of these things stop you from living.
Right. Because you got to live somewhere, and you just, like you said, adapt, pivot, and change, and go with the flow, and keep your go bag ready.
Go with the flow, but keep the go bag ready.
But keep your go bag ready just in case. Thank you.